Hi there, welcome back. I'm going to talk about Pulp Fiction, which I recently rewatched. I've never actually covered this film. I thought it'd be fun to cover it as the year kind of winds down to a stall. So this film just got a 4K re-release on digital and on physical media. Now I had it in iTunes as a backup thing. In iTunes, if you buy the film and it's kind of upgraded, they'll do the upgrade on your digital without having to pay for it. So if I know a film's coming out, I don't want to spend a fortune on the buying a new disc. I'll probably just buy it when it's cheap on iTunes and then get the upgrade that way. I mean, streaming is still not as good as discs, but a 4K stream is better than a physical Blu-ray, so I can see what the quality's like. So I got the upgrade for streaming, and I watched it on my projector to see it in a big screen again for the first time in years. I saw it in the cinema when it was released, and I've only ever seen it in video and DVD and Blu-ray since then. I'm not sure I even watched it on Blu-ray. I bought it the Blu-ray. I don't think I've ever watched the Blu-ray because I'd seen it enough at that point. It's a film. I was a film student in the early 90s. And that was peak Tarantino time for film students quoting his movies all the time. In a way that was very annoying, to be honest. It was like some of these people had no idea there was other good directors out there. Really, in a way that it was just annoying because they just showed real ignorance. And just quoting Reservoir Dogs and then Pulp Fiction all the time just became a bit of a nightmare. So, it did become a bit annoying to watch. Even though I enjoyed the film, it was still like it was so overpraised compared to a bunch of other really good films as well. So, I've always had a bit of annoyance with Pulp Fiction, in the sense of I knew it was a good film, but I always felt there was other really great films too. And it's still one of Tarantino's better films, actually. It's still a film I really enjoy rewatching it. But watching it again on a bigger screen actually made you appreciate it a bit more in the way that it weaves in and out, in the way that certain sequences work. Because it really is, in a strange way, Tarantino's version of Dario Argento's Inferno. Sort of like the Inferno to Reservoir Dogs, you know, the Inferno to Suspiria, Pulp Fiction to Reservoir Dogs, a sense of what was once a kind of a much tighter narrative expands in the second film to be a much more looser structure, a much more made up of set pieces. In this case, it's verbal set pieces rather than visual set pieces. But it's like a set piece of all these set pieces orbiting each other and creating a story. In a way that's more interesting in the first one, but would strike some as self-indulgent. So, it was very enjoyable to watch this film again and actually see the elements that you don't really get when you're actually watching it on video and a TV. TVs are good for some things, for picture quality and things, but they're bad for the overall immersion within the story and the pacing of the way directors shoot for films to release the film in the cinema. There's lots of pacing decisions they make that become kind of blurred when you see it on TV because it's based on certain like sound cues and visual cues, and the way a room looks through a lens in a big screen that won't really register on the same way in TV. So you end up losing quite a lot. So this film it's nice to see the film again that actually has that, because this is a film of long scenes. It is very influenced by The Good, the Bad and Ugly, where Good, the Bad and Ugly stretch things out and let things play and enjoy the absurdities of the situation and just let things happen. And this film does the same. It has lots of moments, but a lot of the moments are scenes that other films wouldn't really invest in. Like, and this film uses them as a centre point. So he uses character motivation as a centre point rather than something to explain the next set piece. So the first section is really the setup. You see, basically see the first act of the third story is the introduction to this film, where you get introduced to Tim Roth's character, Amanda Plummer's character. You get to see John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson at work as hitmen. And then the film just goes to the next story and then comes back later on, really. And the first story is really about... anyone watching this has seen the film. But the first story is obviously about the date with the boss's wife and how it becomes this chat fest of these two characters. Now they're getting to meet each other in this big garish environment, and how they're basically both off their heads throughout this first section of the film, because Vincent's a heroin addict, John Travolta's character's a heroin addict, and Mia, who's the Uma Thurman character, she's a cocaine addict. And you don't really get it the same way when you see it in TV, that they're both off their heads the whole time. They're both addicts and they're both like gone. They're affected by their drugs of choice, and you see it in little movements. In a way, and the camera floats around them as well, signals, the way the pace and the shots are, signals like a slight stupor within the characters. So everything's built up as a set piece to give you this idea these people are on something, but it means when they actually start talking, their guards start down a bit more, so they can actually say things that are probably more interesting you would get in a normal conversation in this situation. But it also means that later on, a lot of things add up to the fact that she mistakes his heroin for cocaine and overdoses, because earlier on you find out that the drug dealer put it in a different bag than it should have been because he'd ran out, and you never expect anyone else but John Travolta to see it. So it was that kind of character beat that lands a lot better in the big screen experience, because when you're watching these characters hang out, and it's just something that pops a little bit more on the big screen. In a way, I remember seeing that in the big screen and not registering when I see it on TV. It's the thing of what you register and what you don't actually is more important on the big screen. Like certain close-ups of Bruce Willis in the first section, when he's in that section, that'll pay off later on. They play much more like not a parody, but just a bit more smart arse on TV screen. But if you see on the bigger screen, they play off the moments of a character in this situation, and the camera's on Bruce Willis's face because he's a movie star, and they're appreciating the fact he's a movie star. The way Sergio Leone would do with like Charles Bronson. And those moments punctuate the early scenes. It's not even Bruce Willis' story, he's just in it. So lots of these things happen. Like, people get their entries a bit more impactful. You get a sense that people up more because it's the bigger screen that's been designed for the bigger screen. It's one of the things that Tarantino, I think, lost a little bit for a while. Like, I found, like, in the 2000s, some of his entrances and for some characters were a bit forced compared to what you got here. It just felt like it was something that was either overwritten or directed, and here it feels much more natural. But it seems to be doing better again recently. Like the last few films, it seems to have, or basically from Hateful Eight and Once Upon in Hollywood, both seem to be much better. Those kind of casual pacings and entries and exits, in a way that I thought like Django Unchained and Inglourious Basterds both felt like he was trying too hard to introduce people sometimes and take them off stage. I just felt that was a bit needier as a director then. But that's just me. So you get the first section. It's really enjoyable. It's a romantic black comedy, really. Meet cute date involving an overdose. You know, it's really enjoyable. You understand the genres he's twisting with, and you're always in the situation, especially towards the end of that section where she overdoses. It's like it's very tense and very just dark, but it's also got that weird sweetness from the earlier section with them talking that adds a lot of weird emotion to the sequence. In a way, again, you don't really get in the TV when you see it in TV. The second section really gains a lot from seeing it in the big screen because you get this. This is like the epic section of the film. This is like the action section of the film, even though the first half of it is actually just talking. It's basically Bruce Willis as a boxer who was meant to through the fight. He didn't. He conned his boss and made a lot of money in the bets. So everyone's betting against him. So he made money by betting on himself. And he's on the run from the mob. Not the smartest move, but it's a really good central conceit. And then basically you see him as a girlfriend, you're realising he's just going to get out of LA now. He's got a girlfriend, he's trying his best to be a good boyfriend to her. But she forgets to get his watch, which has a family significance to him. He really cares about the watch. She has to try and go back and get it, which leads to the action section. This is a really enjoyable section. I mean, in some ways I think it's my favourite section of the film. And it's the one section I think is more underrated by a lot of people. This one I really liked was the whole idea of just them in a hotel room for a while and just talking, and she's much more innocent. With him, he's trying to be nice, but you can sense, especially when you've seen the big screen, you can sense in the movements, there's still this tension to him. There's the potential for violence that come with men who work in violence all the time, especially a boxer. It's just always there. It's just this powder keg is ready to go off at any possible moment. So that when he has to go back to get the watch, you're just waiting for it to go off. And Tarantino knows it. He stretches it for a long time. And then when you just think the confrontation is going to come between him and the big boss, the picture takes a wild turn into this weird underground gay dungeon that's rather twisted and weird and very deliverance focused. But again, it has this tension to it that's always there, but it's a tension that's suddenly added humour to what was a very tense situation. So it adds another layer of unpredictability. And that's what was enjoyable watching the film these years later is how well the moods switch slowly over time. How well written it was to go from one mood to the other and to keep the focus floating. And what's interesting in the film is the kind of floating nature of it actually suits the anthology aspect of different stories. A lot of anthologies are short like their normal films, so some people feel shortchanged. You get a bit of a film and then you stop and start another one because they're short and paced like a normal film, but compressed. In this film, it's much more. Well, these are short stories. We want to give them the space to actually be the stories, and we're going to pace the film to what the stories need. And we have them floating around each other so that they interact, and we get the sense of they have a connection to each other that's not literal, that's not something you need to try and intellectualize, it's just felt. So we finally get to the final story, which is the Bonnie situation, which is basically switching back to the beginning of the film where these two hitmen are trying to solve a situation. Something happens which Samuel Jackson's character says is a miracle and John Travolta's character says not, and they have to try and get rid of a body covered in blood in LA traffic, and they go to the pal of Samuel Jackson's, and all hell, basically it's like trying to solve a situation to make sure all hell doesn't break loose. It's like, how do you neuter a situation that could go to violence really quickly, and how it turns into like a domestic comedy where the pal was played by Tarantino is actually trying to get them out of there before his wife gets home because he's married and that went in a divorce for him, and try to deal with that situation with an expert as well coming in, played by Harvey Keitel. And it's just like this tense situation and then just deflating it. And just as it's been deflated, then you get the violence when they go for a coffee after it. So the violence takes place and you're back in the and what was the start of the film, which was this coffee shop, and suddenly there's a robbery and all hell breaks loose. So again, it's changing the mood of the scenes all the time, and taking what should be a terrifying situation and making it funny, and then suddenly, during what should be an easy situation, becomes violent, and it's about Samuel Jackson's character sort of trying to reevaluate his life after he thinks he witnessed a miracle. So again, it's a really nice scene where it's a man trying to articulate something he didn't quite understand, and his friend not getting it. And because of the pace of the film until then, that it has had a kind of a slower pace, it's a relaxed pace, it's not trying to push things. You actually feel this is a natural expression of the film, rather than, oh god, why was suddenly a talk scene at the end of the film? It just feels like something that's been in the mood of the film, where it's like how you survive life when craziness can come at you at any moment. So it becomes less of a gangster film and more of a just people try to survive their lives type of film. So it's understandable. It's like it looks like a genre film, but it's also like a bizarre, cartoonish kitchen sink drama film as well at the same time. It's got these weird mixes going on. And it's a shame that Tarantino never really went back into that. Like, he did it with Jackie Brown a little bit, but it was much more of a melancholic story there. And then when he came back after a break from filmmaking, the films were a bit coarser and more violent. They were much more focused on genre rather than playful with the genre. It just feel like sometimes they were a bit studied rather than having the playfulness that you'd kind of want from them. So it's kind of, it's something he's kicking back to a bit more recently. I think his films become more playful and a bit more relaxed recently. But for a while, it feels like sometimes he was imitating himself rather than being himself. At least for me, a lot of his fans would probably disagree, but for me there was that element there. Because when you see Pulp Fiction, you see someone who's very relaxed in what they're doing. I'm not sure how relaxed it was making the film, but it comes across as a relaxed film, a confident film. Like a film that's advancing beyond what he did first time round, trying something different. I mean, his first three films, Tarantino kind of went from one to the other. They're all crime movies, but always different type of crime movies. One was a paranoid thriller. One was like more of a kind of epic story of Los Angeles that has a kind of kitchen sink elements as well as the crime. And then you had a middle age story. So they're all crime stories, but all were very different genres of a crime story. And then when he advanced beyond that into other genres, into other of his genres, it did seem like he was trying to encompass the genres too much in a weird way, or just it was less playful, it was less confident. Again, at least to me, it felt less confident filmmaking. So Pulp Fiction is terrific. It's held up really well. A lot better than a lot of other Tarantino films. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the videos I've just done. This is probably me off till after Christmas. I mean, if I see Avatar before Christmas, I might do a video on that one. But unless that happens, that's me done for till after New Year. So I hope you enjoyed the videos this year. Hope you have a good Christmas, and I'll see you later. Bye.